Welcome to this week's edition of the Wheels and Deals Community Spotlight, brought to you by Wheels and Deals of Pomeroy and the Meigs Independent Press.
This is Carrie Rose with Meigs Independent Press, and I'm here this week with Pastor Adam Will with Mount Hermon United Brethren Church. He's the pastor out there, and we wanted to talk a little bit about, wanted to have you on to talk about community. Okay. And to talk about a little bit, there's so much division that we've had, not just nationally, but even here locally in our community. There's division within families, there's a lot of different things, and this is the Christmas season. Mm-hmm. This is not this is the holidays. This is not the season to have that division. So give us a little bit from your perspective. Well, first tell us a little bit about your church, where you're at.
Well, as you said, my name is Adam Will. I'm the pastor of Mount Hermon United Brethren Church, located basically in the dead center of the county, just north of 5 Points, if you know where that is. And who doesn't know where 5 Points is?
I don't know.
But I've been there for the last 5 years, and so yeah, I'm a native of Meigs County, lived here my whole life, and so yeah. So hope that's enough of an introduction. But going to what you said, we've gone through a really traumatic year. Honestly, if you study history, we haven't encountered something like this for a long time. People have said this was a combination of the 1918 Spanish influenza with the 1968 riots and the 1968 election, and a few other things I'll throw in for good measure. Yeah. So yeah, we've had, if you think about it, we've had COVID, we've had the COVID mitigating measures or lockdowns, we've had the mask mandates, we've had politics, we've had the election, we've had the results after the election, and we have a national election that is still being contested by some. So this is not necessarily a fun time to sit down with friends and family. Social media this year has been incredibly toxic, and there have been a lot of documentaries that have come out just this year, actually, on the effect of social media. But you're right, I do see among people in our community and on the national level a desire to move towards not just, I think, because it's the holidays, but largely because of that. It's time for us to be unified, to hopefully put 2020 behind us. And we don't know what 2020 will bring, but we hope to be more...
2021. Don't put that curse on us.
We don't want to go backwards.
We don't want to go backwards again.
Go backwards. But what 2021 would bring. And so there's been a lot of division among families, among churches. I know of people who have left their churches because there has been disagreement over, for example, how a local church is going to respond to COVID. We've had some local churches that have been very cautious with COVID, other churches who have kind of been more lax, and there have been people who have been really upset about those responses. We see that with the way we're going to educate kids. There's a lot of drama over that and arguments, and I don't want to make light of these because these are real issues that affect our lives.
Yeah, we're not making light of any of that.
Right.
It is, but we're also trying to, because I know you do like to put humor in things.
I do.
And if you follow me on Facebook, you see that. But also during a lot of these times of contention, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation is because you've had a pretty good level-headed reason response to when you see this level of division. Because first of all, if you're a believer, there's a certain level of behavior if you're a believer in Christ, which some of you may not be, and that's okay too. But the thing is that we are community here.
Right.
Meigs County is a small community, and so it's not so much even about the level of religion in it as much as it is we're friends and neighbors. Well, so how do you deal with how do we as a community get that back?
Well, there's a few different things that you hit on, and I wanted to tackle. One of those is for those of you who are people of faith, and in our area demographically, you're more likely to be Judeo-Christian if you're a person of faith. But in our faith of Christianity, we believe that it is about serving God and serving others. So we're putting others before ourselves. And even if you're not a person of faith, that is, the golden rule is found in many places. And that's what a lot of people strive to live by. And so this idea is that we are supposed to seek the well-being of others first. And so sometimes that means, to be blunt, that we need to shut up and not let our own opinions out. And I will confess that is very hard for me. It's something I've tried to learn over the years. Sometimes it means that we have to be willing to forgive people for some of the hurtful, and even we might feel that they're dumb things they've said, either in person or social media or retweeted or whatever, because in the moments where we're really passionate, where we get really intense about something, we can say those things. But I also think that it comes down to the idea of caring about others. So we are in a community. Maybe some of you know people who, and maybe you know people who have that idea that well, they might be alone, but at least they're right. And don't get me wrong, I think truth is real, and we need to focus on truth, and we need to live lives based on facts and reason and not imagination. But what fun is being right if you're all alone, if you've alienated everybody from your life? And so this idea that our grandparents and great-grandparents grew up with, that you could sit down with your neighbor, especially over the holidays, and you could disagree with them on certain things, but you, at the end of the day, you were still neighbors, you were still family. And yes, there's always been divisions in society, but we have the opportunity to correct that by sitting down with others. One of the things I've been trying to do, it's been harder with COVID, but I've been really trying to do this, is try to have conversations with people that I don't know or that I don't necessarily agree with. I've been doing a lot of that through Zoom. I've been sitting down, going down to the coffee shop and talking with people, and I just want to hear their story, hear their point of view. And even though in my mind they might be totally out of left field, I want to understand why they feel that way. Because on one hand, if I do want to convince them of my perspective, I got to understand why they feel the way they do, but also to recognize that behind that label or that opinion that they have put out there or that I put out there, they are a human being. In Christianity, we have this belief that everybody's made in the image of God. So even if they don't believe in God or they don't worship the way we do, they're still made in God's image. And so for me to reject you because of, I don't like your reporting, or I don't like who you are, what you do, that's also, I got to be really careful that I'm not also rejecting a fellow person who's made in God's image. And it's okay to have disagreements. It's okay to unfriend or block people on social media, but it's not okay for us to use these platforms to just bash and bully people. And I don't think that anybody on either side of the political spectrum or COVID spectrum really wants to see that happen.
And that's, at the end of the day, remember, I mean, and I hear it over and over again, and I specifically go back to this. Whenever I'm on a scene of a house fire, and I couldn't tell you how many house fires I've covered in my career, I really don't know. But every time that I see one of those that I'm on there, I know as soon as I put that word out there, the first response that I'm going to be, there's two things that people always want to know. First of all, is everybody okay? Secondly, how can we help?
Right.
Can we send donations? Right. People are ready to donate money, they're ready to donate clothing, they're ready to donate anything that these people need. When you've lost everything and you have a community that's willing to step in and help you like that, it means everything. And I've seen people be completely overwhelmed because I've come up to them and I'm like, where would you like things to be sent? I'm not, I try to do it as delicately as I can because I don't want to be insensitive to what they're going through. But I have people that are willing to help you. So how can they help you? That's where we live. And at the end of the day, it's like, during the flood, we saw in Pomeroy and different areas around the community. You hear more about Pomeroy because it was all the stores and things that got impacted. But Racine also had flooding. There were other areas that had flooding. And you saw people just come out of the woodwork to help. We're that kind of community.
Well, and I think that one of the things that we're going through right now we're really being impacted by this third COVID surge across Ohio, especially. It's the first time in Meigs County we've really been impacted significantly. And I think one of the advantages we have is that one of the very things that's driven us apart is also one of the things that can unite us back together, because people are tired, people are lonely, people are hurting, and they are, even if it can't be in person, they are itching for someone to talk to, even if it's just a text conversation, to reach out and say, hey, how are you? How can I help you? Can I pray for you? Something like that. And I think one of those things like that could be one of the things that actually brings us back together as a community.
And I think about our elderly. I think about our immune compromised that have not been able to be out. And I know, Overbrook went through so much with fighting that when COVID went through there, and the staff, and there were so many people though. There were so many businesses and individuals that said, we're gonna buy you lunch.
Right.
And so they stepped up and did that. That's the kind of community we're in. And somehow we have to go beyond all the bad things that have happened, and we've got to get back to what makes living in Meigs County great. And when I say that, I'm not trying to throw in a political stance with it. I really truly believe that living here is fantastic. If I didn't, I wouldn't live here. I mean, I could go anywhere and have a career anywhere doing anything. But I chose to stay here, and I chose to invest in being in Meigs County. And it's why I'm doing this. It's why, it's why Wheels and Deals has worked with me to be able to present Community Spotlight. This is about Meigs County, and Meigs County helping Meigs County. That's the heart of what this whole program is supposed to be about.
Right.
And somehow we've got to go get away from being angry at everyone and everything and take care of one another again.
Right.
And I think that's where we, and that's what I've seen consistently with what you've been doing, is that's what you're trying to get people to do.
We've got to look beyond the labels. You talk about politics. I mean, it was to the point where people were basing their friendships off of whose sign they had in their yard. Yeah. And I get that, because especially, when somebody's livelihood is on the line, I understand how that is deeply personal. But at the same time, we've got to be able to disagree and do so in love and kindness. And that's an art that we've lost. And it's not just in Meigs County. I mean, this is something that that is honestly, if something destroys Western civilization, folks, it won't be 2020. It will be our inability to dialogue with each other.
And that's basically what we're saying. Try to start a conversation. So hopefully today, if you're seeing this, that maybe you can start a conversation. Maybe you can listen a little bit more. I remember something that a pastor said that he preached on back at Race United Methodist Church. It was actually Pastor Kerry Wood, and he kept saying it over and over and over again: love, love, listen, listen. And I think he probably got that somewhere else, but I remember him saying that. I remember that, listen. Love means we listen to one another, and no one's going to agree on everything all the time.
Right.
But maybe, if you're having some divisions and you're having some problems, especially with your family, try to have a little bit of charity.
Right. Like today it was snowy. Perfect day to just sit and listen and reflect and have that conversation with somebody.
And get back to community.
Right.
Let's get back to community. Let's make 2021 all about community and one another. So, is there anything else?
No, I think that pretty well sums it up.
So let's get back to community, and we will be right here again next week on Community Spotlight with Meigs Independent Press. And actually, we're going to have Adam Will back on again next time. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about Christmas and the Christmas season. But, tune in, share this, start a conversation. Maybe you don't agree with everything we said, but start a conversation. And let's get back to being community. Let's get back to being friends and neighbors. This is Carrie Rose, the Meigs Independent Press, with Wheels and Deals Community Spotlight.
This week's Community Spotlight is brought to you by Wheels and Deals of Pomeroy and the Meigs Independent Press.